Hi, everyone. As you know, Acuity Medical Law attended the Alliance for Responsible Citizenship, or ARC conference in London, England at the end of June. I'm going to tell you about ARC and how the conference went. ARC describes themselves as an international movement with a vision for a better world where empowered citizens take responsibility and work together to bring flourishing and prosperity to their families, communities, and nations. They wrote that we believe we have reached a civilizational moment across the world. People are waking up to a choice we face. Will we recover a vision of society that leads to freedom, prosperity, and flourishing, or will we resign ourselves to a future of increasing stagnation, division, and managed decline? ARC is about building hope, solutions, and connections. They say that they want to relay the foundations of our civilization. So, this was the third annual ARC conference. Thousands of persons were in attendance for this 3-day event, which happened at the Olympia in London. Acuity arrived on the first morning, having to enter the conference center through a raucous group of protesters who had signs about how we were all a bunch of greasy capitalists. They apparently didn't have the energy to show up for the second or third day, and honestly, I'm still impressed that they were up that early to protest on a Tuesday morning. These sort of far left, anti prosperity, and anti conservative types wouldn't even make it out of bed before 1 p.m. for a protest in Canada, in my experience. So kudos to them, I suppose. As you likely have heard, there was a heat wave in London during the conference. As you've also likely heard, there's little to no air conditioning in the United Kingdom. Even in Olympia, it seemed there was some kind of climate control, but definitely not a sufficient one. It was damn hot all day long. And I say this because it was rather interesting to be in the thick of this heat. At one point, it was above 40 degrees Celsius, and there was an erupting public and media dialogue over air conditioning culture in the UK happening all week long. So, funnily enough, it was thematically tied in with some of what was being discussed at the conference, including climate hysteria. Despite only being responsible for 1% of the world's carbon emissions, there are many who argue that no one in the UK should have air conditioning because they allege that it would worsen global warming. This started this lively online battle between cultures, with Americans pointing out that Europe's heat deaths exceed American gun violence deaths every year, which is actually true, and it's quite wild. But anyways, I digress. I want to talk about ARC. So there are tons of speakers throughout these 3 days with presentations on this main stage and also various lunch and dinner events with other speakers. There are also networking spaces. Organizations have booths set up to interact with attendees. Books are being signed and sold. Conversations are being held. Podcasts are being recorded. Big names in conservative culture and politics are just milling about, talking to other attendees. It's a really friendly community and a really uplifting atmosphere. Before I get into some of the best speeches and moments from ARC, I will first address kind of a question that you might be wondering, which is why was Acuity Medical Law at ARC to begin with? And the short answer is that our values align with those of ARC. The desire for freedom, prosperity, and civilizational success rather than decline. The long answer is that yes, we are a medical malpractice law firm, and that is the main thing that we do. We help to bring justice to clients who have been harmed in Canada's healthcare system, but we are also invested in trying to become a part of the movement that seeks to halt Western civilizational decline. It's why we podcast and why we talk about politics and culture. And both the legal side and the podcasting and cultural side are really inseparable because they're both driven by the same principles. The way that we approach and discuss cases and approach and discuss cultural issues are really one and the same. Our law firm's logo contains the words logos, ethos, and pathos. These words form what is known as a rhetorical triangle, which Aristotle identified as necessary for appealing to an audience. Logos is an appeal to reason. It is the foundation of a successful argument in law or anywhere else in life, including the conversations we have with guests and with each other. Ethos is an appeal to character and credibility and to integrity. while pathos is an appeal to emotions, beliefs, or values. Pathos in our field is about approaching others with empathy and with compassion. That said, let me get into some of the best moments of ARC. There are really too many to name, so I'm going to pick three of the ones that really stuck with me. Number one was sculptor Sabine Howard. He moved me to tears. Howard is behind the 58-foot-long World War I memorial sculpture called A Soldier's Journey, which is located in Washington, D.C. I don't share Howard's faith, but his messages about beauty and human dignity were profoundly moving. He argued about the loss of beauty in art and architecture as a reflection of a deeper civilizational crisis. Here's some of his speech from ARC.
So, if we see human beings as meaningless, we will build systems that treat them as worthless. But if we see human beings as made in the image of God, we will build monuments and nations that reflect their sacred worth. For bronze will weather, and stone will age, and generations will pass beneath those structures we create. But, and it's a big one, if we remain faithful to our calling and faithful to the dignity of our being, faithful to the truth that grounds free will, then what endures will not simply be a monument. What endures will be a people who remember who they are. A people who rise to be their best version. Thank you.
Number two, this was Captain Victor Glover. Victor is a U.S. Navy SEAL and NASA astronaut who spoke about going to the moon in a flyby as a pilot of Artemis II this April. He also spent 6 months living on the International Space Station. He spoke about how profound it is to see planet Earth floating in the black vastness of space and what it taught him about humanity, wonder, gratitude, and love. He said, quote, "I don't see enough magic in the world, wonder and magic." Here's some of what he said.
Well, this shot is from a camera on the solar array during the eclipse of the sun going behind the moon. But we're so close to the moon is 35 times larger than the sun. When you see an eclipse from Earth, the sun and the moon are about the same size. That's why you get a very distinct ring around the moon. And so this solar eclipse was one of the moments on the mission where I just felt awe. We use that word a lot, but I felt an awe and an inspiration. And why am I explaining these pictures to you and trying to share this message with you is I think it's important for us to carry two things with us as leaders, as people who, to whom much is given, much is required. I think I don't see it enough in the world, wonder and magic. And as an adult, as a 50-year-old, it even feels strange to say those things sometimes, but they exist. This shot would not have been possible days later or days earlier. Our trajectory would not have flown through the shadow of the moon. But as I get back to Earth and I think about that never gets old to say, coming back to Earth. But now, being back on Earth and thinking about that experience, that would have happened whether I was there or not. This is the picture we took from inside the capsule, and it looked even more amazing than that. Okay, can I tell a 2-minute story? When I lifted my solar eclipse glasses, my eyes were still adjusting. So when I looked out the window, all I saw was a black hole where the moon was, and this light emanating from around it. And as we're sitting there talking about it, I say to my colleague, I said, "You got to come see this. I mean, the moon is right in front of us, and then it's gone." And so as my eyes start to adjust, I start to see the halo around the moon, and I see stars in it. And usually when there's light outside, you can't see the stars because it's too bright. It overpowers, and your eyes adjust automatically. And so I can see stars in the glow. If you can go back to that picture, please go back one picture. That picture is the one I'm describing. And that glow had stars in it. And seeing those stars, I'm going, wait, I can't understand why I can see stars in this image now. And then I start to see craters on the surface of the moon. Now, the sun is 100 million miles away and behind the moon. So seeing craters means there's light coming from somewhere. And as my eyes continue to adjust, the craters are blue. They're blue. the light on the moon is the earth shining on the surface of the moon. And I called over to Reed and I said, Reed, look at this. And he floated up to the window and he and Christina both said, oh my God, oh my God. And I often will, you as Christians, sometimes we'll hear people say that, and what do we usually respond? And we say, don't use the Lord's name in vain. And it wasn't in vain. It was the complete right response in that moment. And as I think more about that, that was such a moving moment for all of us. Whether we experienced it up close or not, we live in a universe where wonder and awe and magic exist. And I think what I've been driven to is gratitude. I am extremely grateful for the responsibility that I've been entrusted with. And as leaders, I think we have to remember, you talk about human flourishing, the human dignity and love. I was just talking to Joel backstage about leadership and how when I think of sailors, as a leader of sailors, as a military officer, I talk about love more than anything else. My love for sailors, that sailor has a family. Constantine's son is sitting right here in the front row. That I think about love more than anything. It drives my leadership philosophy. And so what I would leave you with, I'm sorry, it's been very long. If you look at that picture and you think it's amazing, it connects us all. All of us live in the universe that produced that wonder. And we need to spread that wonder, that awe, that magic with a sense of love as we work toward enhancing and ensuring the future of human flourishing. We have to keep human dignity at the center of it.
Victor Glover, thank you.
Okay, and number 3 is veteran Dr. Megan Mobb. She spoke about the ways that women shape culture and civilization as the carriers of culture, now being called upon, she said, to save the West. She described how our freedoms are fragile, they're rare and worth fighting for. She said that it is a lie that women are incidental to the fate of civilization, but she warned that women's empathy can be captured and manipulated as a tool of self-destruction. This led her to insist on the importance of truth and moral clarity. I think I agree with absolutely every word she said. Here's some of her speech.
The West has the moral vocabulary to name sin, the legal structure to correct injustice, and the civilizational humility to try again. That is worth defending. And so the better story for women must begin with a better account of freedom. Freedom is not escape. Freedom is not resentment. Freedom is not the endless multiplication of options without any account of what those options are for. Freedom at its highest is the capacity to choose the good and then bind ourselves to it with love. The freedom to make and keep promises, the freedom to build a family, the freedom to serve your nation, the freedom to pursue excellence without severing ourselves from obligation, the freedom to belong to people and places that can make demands on us because they have first given us meaning. The better story is that women were made for all of it. To give life, guard truth, build homes, shape nations, civilize power, and remind men that some things are worth dying for because they are first worth living for. One of the greatest lies of our age is that women are incidental to the fate of civilization. Our adversaries know better. Russia, China, Iran, they understand that women are not a niche constituency, a decorative demographic, or a moral accessory to the great questions of history. Women are strategic terrain. Women are the canary in the coal mine. Where women are free, educated, safe, and equal before the law, civilization is functioning. Where women are subjugated, silenced, erased, trafficked, or used as instruments of propaganda, civilization is failing. But as I said before, women are also the carriers of culture. And when the carriers of culture are captured by bad ideas and worse actors, civilization does not merely weaken itself. It begins to turn against. The very traits that make women indispensable to renewal can, when manipulated, become instruments of self-destruction. Empathy can be redirected, agreeableness exploited. The desire for harmony can be used to silence necessary truth. The instinct that we carry to protect the vulnerable can be captured by movements that redefine predators as victims and victims as inconveniences. If our compassion can be manipulated, then we must anchor it in truth. If our empathy can be captured, then we must recover moral clarity. And that recovery should not make women harder, colder, or less compassionate. It should make us more fully ourselves. A woman can build a home and shape a nation. She can hold a child and hold a line. A woman can love the West because not because the West has never failed her, but because the West remains the civilization most capable of recognizing her dignity, protecting her freedom, correcting its sins, and giving her daughters a future. That is the work of Reconstruction before us. That is the better story. I began with the paintings in my parents' home, Nijmegen and Little Round Top. Men crossing a river under fire to help liberate a continent. Men charging down a hill so the nation founded on liberty might not perish while still divided against itself. But those paintings are half the story. During that brutal river crossing, the commander, Julian Cook, a devout Catholic, loudly recited the Hail Mary to give courage to his men. Throughout the duration of the Civil War, John Chamberlain wrote endless letters to his beloved wife saying, "We fight for all the guarantees of what men should love, for the protection and permanence and peace of what is most dear and sacred to every heart." These men, in moments of great consequence and horrible danger, turned to their belief in women to give them strength and fortitude. That is why women are the West's greatest gift, and the West is the greatest gift to womanhood, because the West alone recognized her power and then gave her power purpose and meaning. The story isn't that women are victims of West. The story is that they are being the ones called to save it. Thank you.
These 3 talks have really stuck with me. Like I said, there were so many more. Ayaan Hirsi Ali, Konstantin Kisin, Nigel Bigar, Michael Schellenberger, so many. It was like being in an intellectual and philosophical candy store. I'm so grateful that Acuity Medical Law had the opportunity to attend. It was absolutely lovely, and I hope you enjoyed this video as well.